Hey guys, Daniel from Green Life Farm here again. We're going to discuss some compost and nutrition. Very important when it comes to farming. You got to make sure the right stuff's in your ground so that the plants grow as healthy and as quickly as possible, produce the best possible fruit for you. Okay, so first thing we're going to talk about is what we put in our ground. Little disclaimer, I want to make sure you guys know and understand the difference between a heavy feeding crop and a light feeding crop. So in the bonuses below, I'm going to add a sheet of the list of vegetables we do and tell you which ones are heavier feeding and which ones are light feeding. So here we have chicken manure pelleted with calcium. The nice thing about this is since it's pelleted, you don't have to wait that 90 days for bacteria to burn off. It's already clean. It's ready to go. You can put that on plants. It's good. It's not going to burn anything, and you're not going to have disease issues, both E. coli, etc. Now, the reason it has calcium is if you know anything about chicken manure, most of their calcium goes to the construction of the eggs. So their manure does not have a lot of calcium. So when you're buying it, you want to get the pelleted manure that is with added calcium. It's gonna be much better. It gives you a little rating at the bottom. 532 is what this is. It's an organic certified pelleted chicken manure. Works really great. We use it on a few different greens as well as our heavy feeders. Like I said in the notes below, I will add that in the bonuses. But yeah, this is something that when it comes to early spring production, before the microbes in your soil reach that 10 to 12 degrees Celsius, they're really not working and pumping out at 100%. So they're not able to move that nitrogen that's already in your ground right to your plant to get that early growth. So if you're trying to do an early salad mix outside, an early spinach, something like that, you're going to want to add a little bit of this chicken manure. A little bit goes a long way. We just take it, we have a little bucket, scoop it out, put it across our bed, works really well. Other times, we'll take it, scoop it, put it on the bed, but then we'll rake it kind of into the ground a bit. And as soon as the water hits it, whether rain or irrigation, whatever, it really swells up. Worms come up throughout the night. They work at the microbes around it, and it makes that available for your plants really good. The other thing to remember, since this is an organic certified chicken manure, since it's not an extremely high fertilized rating here, is not going to burn your plants. It's going to be much easier, less dosage. It's okay. Put that on, work it in, and a great way. Springtime, early feeding of nitrogen. This is also we notice, midsummer things can get a little leggy. They're starting to get a little tired. They've used up what's in the ground around them. It's great for doing a second feeding. So. For us, when it comes to your brassicas, so broccoli, cauliflower, cabbage, a few weeks, I would say within a month after we've transplanted, we'll give them another little feeding of this, and it perks them right up, and they look fantastic. You'll enjoy it, your plants will enjoy it, and it's very simple to use. Comes in these 25-pound bags. I'm sure your area has something similar to this or around. Makes it easy to store. And since it is dry manure, being able to work with it is really easy. So when you're starting a market farm, there's one thing I want to mention when it comes to your compost nutrition. The first thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to take some soil samples, send it to whatever local ag extension that does that. They'll go through it all, they'll analyze it, they'll tell you what's there and what's missing. You want to grab a few samples from several parts of your field, including your greenhouses if you have greenhouses or plan on getting greenhouses. It's an excellent way to really get a baseline of what's there and what's missing, and that can tell you how much nitrogen, how much potassium, phosphorus, all your micronutrients, calcium, all that stuff, what you need, or if you're running in excess of anything. So before you start, get some samples done. Next thing on our nutrition list, I want to talk about powdered seaweed. It's a MaxiCrop 0017. So that's your NPK, your K is your potassium, and that's 17. What you do is we add a scoop of this into here, we add a gallon of water, and this is our sprayer. This is done for a foliar feeding. This goes on your leaves. So what we'll do, when we have it ready in our sprayer, we'll go through and we'll spray our crops that are going to be fruiting. So the big thing for us is our tomatoes. We want to make sure every week we're going in, we're giving our tomatoes a nice spray through. We'll do the same with our cucumbers. And just as of lately, last year we started spraying our bush beans right when they're starting to flower. And we've been able to extend our harvest and a heavy harvest for an extra week to 2 weeks. So we went from 3 weeks of heavy harvest now up to 4 and 5 weeks of heavy harvest just by adding this. We've really found it's helped. Now, there's one thing to remember. You're not spraying this the moment it goes into the ground. You're waiting till your crop is getting up, getting established, and you see that it's starting to flower. When it's starting to flower, that's when you want to make sure it's starting to feed. Now, another reason we do this for tomatoes, chances are your tomatoes are going to be in your greenhouse where they're most protected. Now, the thing is, in a greenhouse, it can get quite hot in there. And what happens is, when it gets too hot, the roots of your tomato plants can't properly take up the amount of potassium that they need, and you'll get a yellow circle at the top of your tomatoes that will make a much larger and harder core in the middle of that tomato. You know, it's not the worst thing if it happens, but sometimes customers can get a little picky and they don't want that. And you're not producing your top quality. So what you'll do, you'll take this, you'll have it in the sprayer, you give the tomatoes a spray through once a week, just a nice spray through, nice and light, and that will help the leaves to absorb that potassium, and you'll end up with a better crop. Yeah, so again, I will put another list down below of what crops we use it on, how we do it, what we spray, like how often we spray. It's something that's very easy, very simple. You can add it to your weekly tasks. Even if you missed a week, it's not the worst thing, you know, you can do it bi-weekly. But you'll notice right away that your quality will go up, the amount of flowers will increase. It's just going to be much better for you. This is something that I would definitely suggest. I think this bag here cost me somewhere around that $50 range Canadian. But we've been 3 years on the same bag. You use just a very small scoop. It tells you right on it how much to use. I believe it's a teaspoon per gallon of water. That's our ratio anyway. That's what we found has worked well. You'll enjoy it. Keep it somewhere dry when you're storing it, because if it's wet, obviously, it's going to run out on you. But yeah, something to add to your repertoire of nutrition and compost, all that stuff. Works fantastic. I would recommend this. All right, so the next in our list of our repertoire of what we use here at Green Life Farm, probably the single most important thing is good quality compost. And I can't stress that enough. Compost is something that we add every year, not to every crop, and I will explain that in some of the bonuses below, the bonus sheets. But our compost, we get that delivered by a 53-foot truckload. We get roughly 50,000 pounds per year for our acre farm. And that seems to work the best for what we use. So what I want to mention is, when you're looking for a supplier of compost, you want to ask some questions. You want to ask them, is this a year-old compost? Is it 2-year-old? Is it 3-year-old? How do you make your compost? And I'll give you an example of why. So we actually have a local supplier here that they do what's called a cold burn. So they do a 3-year compost. So they bring in all the materials, and over 3 years, it slowly turns into the compost. It doesn't heat up very much. Anyway, the quality is not good. I prefer a much hotter, quick burn that they do it a 1-year turnover and the compost is ready. What happens is, in that 3-year-old compost, it gets a lot more weed seeds because it didn't get to that temperature and didn't burn off. Also, because it's out in the elements for longer, you'll get some leaching of nutrients because of rain and runoff and stuff like that. You really want to pay attention. So I have gone, I've sourced compost from over an hour away from our farm. They do a 1-year cycle where it's a hot burn. They turn it over, and we get just amazing, dark, quality compost. It comes to our farm in the spring and it's still steaming. It looks fantastic. The nutrients are better. Not a single weed in our compost. Now, in saying all that, I pay a premium for this. I had to first of all pay a much higher delivery charge because we're over an hour away with a large truck. And also the compost itself is almost twice as expensive. But when it comes to growing, this is your livelihood. You need to feed your soil so your soil can feed the plants and the plants can feed you. Guys, you gotta really pay attention. You gotta have quality compost. This is what fuels the farm. This is the organic matter. This is the nutrients that last throughout the season. When you're topping up crops, this is the stuff. You cannot cheap out on this. If you learn anything from the course right here, you gotta pay attention. Do not cheap out on feeding your ground. So yeah, that's the very short of it. Like I said, I'll put in the notes below what crops we use it on and what crops we don't. Because there is some, like when you talk about, like let's just give an example of your lettuce mix. It's a very light feeding crop. What I do is I put it in a spot where the previous year there was a heavy feeder with compost. So this season I will use that bed and I will not put any compost on a light feeding bed. Now, when it comes to, like, let's go back to the brassica example. Broccoli, cauliflower, cabbage. They get a nice, good helping of compost right before they get planted. What I'll do when it comes to laying compost, we just use wheelbarrows currently at our farm. I use 2 wheelbarrows per 50-foot bed, and I just rake it right on top. I have not done it where I've tilled it in yet. I've been very happy with they call it, like the lasagna layering where you're constantly adding to the top. It's worked well for us. The nutrients get in. Your worms throughout the evenings as they come up, because they're nocturnal, they help bring that compost down. They're doing the tilling for you. Yeah, it's very good. We very much enjoy it. You got to get that quality, put it on right, and it's going to serve you much better. Your produce is going to be green, it's going to look nice, it's going to be big, it's going to be fresh. Yeah, quality compost. Make sure you get that. All right, so that wraps up this lesson in compost and nutrition. Couple things I want to add just quickly here at the end. There's one other thing that we will use, and I don't really consider it would be compost nutrition, but it's peat moss. If we have a section of field that's extremely heavy in clay, which we do in our back section, we want to slowly change that into a more loose soil. So every year, until the consistency is where we want it, we will add a bale of peat moss per 100-foot bed. Just something that helps loosen the soil up, makes it so it's not so heavy in that clay. And that's just, you'll find areas in your field that you're going to want to change over time. Whether it's too sandy or whether there's too much clay, holds too much water, drains too fast, whatever it is, there is some other things that you will be adding and taking away that aren't necessarily compost or nutrition. Furthermore, I would like to discuss one more thing that we haven't really gone over here in this one, and that's chemical fertilizers. So this all comes down to another personal preference. Whether you want to be certified organic, non-certified organic, that whole debate. And later in our modules, we have a module about marketing, and we will discuss why we aren't currently certified organic. I won't get into it here. We'll go over that later. But personally, if you're finding issues and you want to start your farm and you're not entirely sure, oh shoot, this crop's having some issues, maybe I want to throw a little bit of Miracle-Gro on this for that. It's all personal preference, okay? Yes, I understand how they mine these minerals, how they use the minerals. I understand that. But in the end, your farm needs to make a profit. And even if it's for a time period where you say, I have 5 years where I want to get to this point where we're using only cover crops for our nutrition as well as compost, maybe in that meantime, you still might need some supplemental minerals. So yeah, like I said earlier, get your soil tests, see what you need, make a plan, and try to stick to that plan. All right, so in conclusion, I do want to mention, if you don't get things right or perfect or whatever your vision of perfect is on nutrients for the first year, it's okay. Plants want to grow. They're gonna do everything they can to grow. They're gonna do everything they can to be healthy. You're not gonna have the absolute perfect system. The goal of the course, the goal of teaching you all this is to start you off further than where I started in the beginning, to get you farther, get you learning quicker. But the big thing is, do not completely stress about this. If you get your soil test in and you're like, oh no, oh no, oh no, it's okay. Take a breather. It's totally fine. We'll get that compost in circulation. You'll throw down some chicken manure and you'll find most things will grow right there for you. You'll have no problem.